What's up, everybody? It's Myrone, aka the soft shred pioneer, aka the chorus connoisseur, guitar player for the legendary band FIRSTBORNE, and right now you are geeking out to Gear Gods. Woo! All right. Welcome. You've made it. You have made it. I'll tell you what, you've made it to my home studio. Right now, I'm hard at work on new FIRSTBORNE recordings. Chris is sending me the most slammingest drums of all time. Girish is sending me the most searing, soaring vocals I've ever heard in my life. James LoMenzo is sending me the most unheard of, crazy low end, the most like thunderous bass tones that you've ever heard. And I have the pleasure, the honor, and the fear of mixing all of these sonic ingredients together into a mighty stew for all of you people to listen to. I figured I'd take some time out of my busy recording schedule to show you some of the axes that I'm, wielding on this. I figured I'd take some time out of my busy recording schedule to show you some of the axes that I'm wielding on these new MP3s. This first one we got here is a VGA Excalibur. One of the things that I like about this guitar is, of course, VGA's patented 1090 neck system. This skunk stripe back here is actually not a skunk stripe. It is a piece of carbon fiber that goes through the entire neck of the guitar, negating the use of a truss rod. There's no truss rod whatsoever in this guitar. I can throw it around, bang it around, spin it around, play it with my teeth or whatever. I can summon the sounds of motorcycles with this guitar. And you know what? It stays in tune. Never need to adjust it. I pick it up out of the case, throw it in an airplane, throw it in the back of my car, I take it out. I'm always ready to rock, baby. I love it. All right, so next up, we've got this insane Dean Blueburst Flying V with the DiMarzio X2N pickup that I've added. Right down here, yeah, that's right, because pink sounds better, This guitar I have in this, I call it half open G tuning. It's a tuning that I think like Doug Aldrich. It's a tuning that I think he pioneered. I saw him talk about it in an instructional video. It is basically, you take your E string and you drop it down to a D, like drop D, and then you take your A string and you drop that down to a G. You got all your Keith Richards chords. But you can still do all your like. So yeah, that's my Dean Flying V. All right, next up, we've got this beautiful, not sure of the year, but definitely 80s. It's an Aria Pro RS Esprit, as it says on the headstock right there.
I think that's Esprit.
This Aria Pro Esprit. This is a guitar that, sometimes you drink a glass of wine and you got the pinky out. Well, this is a guitar that you gotta keep the Yngwie Malmsteen actually for like a hot second endorsed these guitars. And it actually has like a pretty unique pickup system. There are two kind of active single coils, and then this middle coil is actually a dummy coil that is wired with whatever pickup you have selected, whether it's the bridge, the neck, or both, and the middle pickup is designed to cancel the hum. Also, another unique feature of this guitar is each tone knob has a little mini switch, and what the mini switch does, it bumps up the Q of the tone knob, so it kind of gives you this resonant peak that you can like play with. I basically use it on the bridge pickup. I kind of roll off the tone a little bit, and with the resonant peak, it kind of gives it more of a humbucker type sound. But if you roll it up full bore, single coil sound. So usually what I end up doing is, you know, I roll it down a bit and have the bridge be your humbucker and play something totally sloppy and bad. And then you switch to the neck pickup and you roll off the volume a little. Aria Pro. We love it. Next guitar we got up that's been a little bit of a fixture on these FIRSTBORNE recordings is this insane, I think it is a GMW with a Warmoth neck. It's painted by Dan Lawrence, who is the like 80s airbrush guitar god, as it were. I awoke one morning to a text message with a picture of this guitar attached, and it said, "Hey, do you want to buy this?" And you know, I just had to say yes. I think it is an EMG 81 wired straight to a volume knob, and that's it. No fuss about it. Good stuff. This guitar is my red Fender Strat. It's a guitar that I've always kind of switched parts out. I've tried different things on, depending on whatever gig I was playing. Recently, I've put these fancy pants EMG Vince Gill bad boys in it. A couple of cool features. You know, it's your standard volume and tone, but this guy right here, it may look like a tone knob, but it is actually a mid boost that I can kind of dial in and out as I see fit. So you got your regular, degular Strat or whatever. And then you can kind of dial in this mid boost if you need like a little bit, you know, a little extra sauce in the mid range to help kind of push the amp a little bit more. Roll back down and back to playing rhythm. Every single part of the volume knob is usable, so I can have that screaming patch with a lot of gain, you know, and I just roll off the volume and Fender Strat, Donald Judd, and Britney Spears sticker on the back. That's the most important part of the tone right there. All right, last guitar I want to talk to you about today is it's an old Japanese Jackson. You know, I filled in the neck pickup because who needs those? And I've added a little Roland pickup. So this is my guitar that I could do the jazz death metal gig with this guitar. Always stay Roland ready. So we've seen the guitars, we've seen the axes, but people keep asking me, what are you using for amps? What's going on? I'll tell you what, I'm about to reveal the brains behind my entire operation. This is a Gear Gods exclusive. Nobody has ever seen this before. This is a historic moment. This is right here. This is the heart of everything, is this Line 6 Helix. Basically, the thing that I love about the Helix is it just has so many flexible routing options. I've got a send going where I can bring in this Warwick and VGA 88 if I want to. I've got some old rack gear over here, this 88 MP1 that I've used on a couple of FIRSTBORNE songs. I used it on the Anthem and Cut the Strings. I've got this old Gallion Kruger MPL preamp. And then of course the crowd favorite, my trusty Rockman Sustainer. Never leave home without one. What I like doing is I like having my traditional like chunky. And then what I like doing is on a parallel plane of existence, I like to be able to fade in my lead tone with like a bunch of sauce and delay on it and whatnot, and kind of fade that in and out so I can go. Another pedal that I love using all the time is the LoMenzo. If you're not familiar with it, it takes the regular input of your guitar and transforms it into a synthesizer. I think it uses some sort of Illuminati magic to achieve this. I don't know for certain. You're gonna have to ask the lovely folks at Maris on how they achieve this. I've asked several times. They said that I had to perform some sort of cult ritual to like, my schedule didn't allow for it. Maybe yours will. LoMenzo. All right, thanks so much for watching. I think that's most of the stuff in my studio. It's not all the stuff in my studio. You know I keep the secret stuff on lock. There's secret sauce. There's stuff that you'll never know about. No, but in all seriousness, thanks so much for watching. Please check out my band FIRSTBORNE. That's FIRSTBORNE with an E at the end. Check our music out on Spotify. Thanks so much, and keep on geeking out to Gear Gods and rocking in the free world.
Come on in. Hello, welcome to my world. This is James LoMenzo from so many bands, and now currently appearing with FIRSTBORNE. And you are joining me on... Never get used to that. Let's go. All right, so usually on Gear Gods, which I love to watch, we usually go backstage or side stage, right on the street with the bands, and you get to look at all their gear. Well, we've been locked up here for a while and through this pandemic, so I've amassed some of the stuff I have laying around my kind of studio home here, and I thought I would share some of it with you because I always enjoy checking out other people's gear, and I hope you will too. I got a bunch of my basses from all over the place. Some of the amplifiers that I use, these are based on amps that I actually use on stage. Before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about my new band, FIRSTBORNE. On the drums is the amazing, formerly Alembic god, Chris Adler. And playing guitar in this band is a Myrone. You might be able to see a Gear Gods with Myrone. I have no doubt about that. And it will be exciting because he's got some really cool shit going on. And Garish Pradham on vocals. So check us out on thefirstborne.com, FIRSTBORNE with an E. And you can hear all our music and see what we're up to, and hopefully we'll get out of these rooms and come and play for you real soon. But up until then, let me show you some neat stuff I have. Back in the day with BLS, Black Label Society, I put together this mega rig, and it looks something like this.
Wow!
I know, 3,000 watts. Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Two 215 cabinets, and 4 8x10s, and 3 Ashdown power amps, 1,000 watts apiece, and a couple of preamps, a couple of Ashdown preamps, and well, to play with Zakk Wylde, you actually do need all that stuff. Don't let anybody tell you different. Moving from that rig, most recently I've been touring all over the world with John Fogerty. That's been for the past 5 years, and I kind of parsed the thing down because, frankly, I don't think he'd let me on stage with all that stuff. And that rig looks like this. And so what we have there is we have a very kind of slender rig made from Ashdown's new tube stuff, which is a CTM 300. And that's a 300 watt power section, and it's all tubes front and back, and God, it sounds glorious. Again, the Ashdown A10s, they're just a standby. They sound amazing. They're really tight. They're great for a live stage because they don't really get very low. You don't get these rolling subs. The rest of that you can kind of hear in the house. And they focus very well in the mid-ranges, which I love. It's just amazing. So Yeah, the CTM 300 and some other gear too. You can see I've got compressors and other things like that. And I'll go through all that later. So what I'm holding right here, this is a custom bass that Yamaha made for me. It's based on a bass that was put together when I joined Megadeth. And that bass is actually hanging here on the wall. Here, this is made by a guy named John Gaudesi. And it was basically a request I had made. It was based on their old BB style basses. And what I had them do was make me a smaller body, because those old BBs are huge. They come to about there. And then add all these pickups. And the reason I did all that was because the basses that I was playing up until then were Warwick Buzzards. And the Warwick Buzzards had this kind of arrangement of the reverse mirrored Ps, P-bass pickups. And there's something very special about this sound. I fell in love with it after a while. I used it all the way back in Pride and Glory and Black Label and all those other bands. When you have that much space between the two pickups, you get a lot of odd harmonics out of these two low strings, just because it's sitting in a strange place by the bridge, and there's a lot of space. It's not a traditional place where you put a jazz bass right there. And on these D and G strings, the higher strings, they tend to focus a lot more and have a lot more body than they normally would if you had the pickup in the normal place, the jazz bass position. So anyway, I love that setting, and just for good measure, I had them put in that humbucker there, kind of like Billy Sheehan's, only this isn't a stereo bass like his. And just to give it that kind of Jack Bruce warm, heavy thing, if you want to add it on, that's what that volume knob over there does. So anyway, badass bridge, because I like the old Marcus Miller Fender basses, and I really like the way that sounds on these, and a maple neck. And I think that's like a jazz bass, 1962 jazz bass profile. So this bass was made by my good friend Pat at Yamaha, who I said I wanted a second one a year or two ago. And the reason I got a big white one like this is because I was playing in Las Vegas, standing on stage, and somebody had sent me some video, and they said, "Hey, check out you in Las Vegas." And I was probably playing that one, and there were so many people on stage that I kind of felt like, I don't even see where I'm at. Oh, I'm over there. So I said, give me a white bass. At least somebody will see the bass. So I had them make me this beautiful white bass, and it has the exact same configuration that I love. And this one actually sounds, for my money, maybe not as articulate, but certainly it has a lot more punch. And it just has to do with the way the wood kind of fell into place. And so I love both these basses. I've recorded a lot of stuff with that one. Played in Megadeth with that one a lot. This one I've just been playing with John Fogerty and recording some of the FIRSTBORNE stuff. And so these wonderful pickups and everything that I mentioned sound something like this. Let's see. So let me show you where this pickup configuration comes from. I was explaining it with the other bass. It's right here. This is the old Buzzard bass by Warwick. And it's a really cool instrument. This was developed by John Entwistle from The Who and put together by the Warwick people. And this is a fairly old bass. I guess it's from the 90s. And I picked this one up to aggravate a guitar player I was playing with. But then, like an idiot, I fell in love with it because it's obviously so beautiful. It's a long scale neck, through body, and there's those wonderful pickups that I fell in love with. And this bass is extremely cool. It's got a yeah, it's a very articulate instrument. lot of system. Anyway, Warwick Buzzard. The next instrument that I want to show you is a beautiful VGA 5-string. This is very cool. I picked this one up when I was playing with Megadeth. We were doing Hangar 18, and I wanted to be able to replicate a lot of the stuff that Dave Ellison had done. I didn't have a reputable 5-string at the time, so the folks at VGA were nice enough to help me with this. And it's really a fantastic guitar. It has, Myrone's got one too. It doesn't have a traditional truss rod in there. It's actually made out of a polylaminate of several materials that aren't all wood. And so it's a very articulate and very clear sounding bass. It's not a neck through, it's a bolt on. It looks like a neck through. And it just has, this is all their proprietary stuff. So it's a very cool bass, the VGA 5-string. All right, this is a great bass. This is one of my favorite basses that I own. It's a medium scale Alembic distillate, it's called. For the longest time, back in the early 80s, I picked up a full scale Alembic bass. Their Series 1. It's tucked away somewhere in the house. I'd love to show you, but next time. And I was playing that when I joined White Lion. There's actually some pictures of me like early on before we got signed to Atlantic and all that, playing that giant bass on stage. Well, the thing is, it was a giant bass, but an amazing sounding bass nonetheless. A friend of mine, Dennis Kelly, worked at Me By Guitars on 48th Street in Manhattan, which was a great place. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, you like those Alembics, don't you?" And I said, "Sure do, buddy." And he said, "Why don't you come on down, because I just got this thing in." And I said, "Okay, I'll be right down." I checked it out, and I fell in love with this thing immediately. It's got one pickup, and it's got some overqualified electronics, and it's a smaller scale, which is a little easier for me to play. And it's just a wonderful sounding instrument all on its own. Let's see. There it is. And you can hear it's got a great sweep on the tone control here. I'll play it. Almost like a wah-wah. So anyway, what's really cool about this is I had this tucked away forever. I actually forgot I owned it. And when this pandemic thing started and we all got kind of locked up, I started going through a lot of my gear and seeing what was happening. And you know, the gear gods shined on me. And I found this thing. And I was like, what the? I haven't even thought about this guitar in a while. And so I cleaned it up. It was a little noisy and all that. Started playing with it and could not put the thing down. There's just something wonderful about it. Just something about how old it is and how all the wood kind of baked together and all that. So when we started doing the FIRSTBORNE stuff, I just happened to have it like sitting right there. And this was like one of the first things I just kind of plugged in and started playing along with Chris and the guys. And I was like, wow, this is such a great, unique kind of cross between a hybrid old sound and you know, metal sound. And so I recorded quite a lot of the tunes that we have out on this very bass. And I'm still just stuck with this thing. So much so that I started looking to see if I can get a short scale, one of their other models, and they're quite expensive, kids. So anyway, I'm putting money in the bank every day for one of those, but this is really one of my favorite basses that I just happen to own. So there you go. This is the Alembic Distillate from '88, maybe. I'm still confounded. I'll figure it out for you. I'll tell you next time. Certainly not last, and certainly not least, the Billy Sheehan Attitude bass. This is the second one that I got. I think there's a black one back there that I've had for quite some time. I picked this up just because I love them. And they had this wonderful red one, and I was actually using it a lot for my travels in the band Hail, and there's just something about these basses that's really incredible. They have a lot of wood, just things like a baseball bat, pretty much. You could play baseball with it. But it still has the traditional Fender design, Kind of a heavy bass in a way, just for all the wood that's in there, and I guess that's why it has so much push to it. It's got the stereo setup, which I haven't really used very much. I use it for fun, and I'm kind of trying to figure out where I'm going to go with that later on. But this again has that, I had Yamaha do me that big favor and put those pickups together like my Warwick bass that I showed you. And again, I have that cool sound that kind of changes the complexion of this bass, so it doesn't really sound like the typical ones. It's got the front pickup built in, they already make it like that. Alright, so that's the front pickup and the middle pickup, and then we add the back pickup. Things change a little. And it's really good for stuff like this. Let me put on a octave divider. Love that. So I'd like to show you some of the equipment I have here that I use in my studio. Some of the stuff comes out on the road with me, and I'm working in some new gear right now. I'm pretty excited about all that. So let me share some of my stuff with you on. Okay, so here we go. So this is the Line 6 Helix, and I'm just falling in love with this this piece of gear here. It's got a whole bunch of stuff that I'm really excited about. The thing that brought me to this immediately was the model of the Pierce preamp from the 80s, which I used since White Lion and on out through Pride and Glory and all the other bands I played in. They modeled it so well, in fact, that it's almost identical. And so to have that kind of capability in here, I was really excited and interested in this. I talked to Billy Sheehan about that because it was actually his that they modeled. And, so we got on with this. And so I'm trying to incorporate this into my live stuff. I use it all the time for recording right now, and that's just, it's a real benefit. Right now, the way I have it hooked up is I've got it going into this amplifier. It's a preamp and a power amp, and that preamp and power amp is feeding that amplifier right there. So I'm not really using that preamp I was talking about yet. What I'm doing is I'm kind of running my bass through that and then into my pedals and then using some of the onboard effects here. So I've been experimenting with that lately. What I can do with it, the way I have it set up right now is, you can hear it's got a little bit of reverb on it. That's the reverb. And I do that for fun. I'll put that back on because I like to have fun. I can bring in my effects, which are these guys right here on the floor. And if that wasn't enough, I could add a distortion that they've got here. And if that wasn't enough, I've got this kind of cool dual pitch thing that I've been playing with lately, and this is a lot of fun. Here we go. Take that out because I happen to love wah-wah. There's a little wah-wah built in there too. Let's add a pedal right there. Let's see what we can do with that. noise for you. So anyway, let me tell you about some of these amplifiers. These are smaller versions of the ones I showed you before. They're great for what I do around here. You know, sometimes I'll kick one of those out in the garage and crank it up real loud and put a mic on it. Just micing it up in here just because it's easier for you all to see it. Anyway, so the amplifier here is an Ashdown. This used to be what they called a Mark King model. Mark King was the guy at level 42. And he's a fantastic bass player, not a very metal bass player, but I think he kind of affects it pretty nicely. It's got an amazing power section. It's 575 watts. And it's got a lot of dynamic headroom, which basically means that if you clip it really hard, it will clutch down. It'll actually kind of push that to the speakers real quick. And the preamp is very clean. I think it's kind of based on a lot of the stuff they used to do with the Trace Elliott stuff. And some of you might know what I'm talking about. As a matter of fact, Mark, the owner of the company and designer of these amplifiers, used to work at Trace Elliott. And he had a better idea and he started his company. And so they made this one for me. They screened it for me really nice. And it's got some really cool things in it. It's got this straight across the board EQ. It has this little device here that brings up the high end like an exciter, not like an EQ, and that's kind of really cool. It gives it an extra brightness. I don't have it on right now, but it's a very cool thing to have. And so that is feeding this 410 cabinet. This is an ABM 410 by Ashdown. I love the grill on it. It's very cool. I picked this one up just to have as a run around town cabinet for clubs and such. I brought this on tour with me with John Fogerty and used it as a secondary cabinet. Kept the big 810 behind me because I like it loud. And the way I have this set up in here is this Line 6 Helix is actually feeding some tone into the back of this with all these effects. And I'm also feeding my guitar directly into the front end of this preamp so I can mix those two things together. That power amp is powering these 410s. Now next to that is this 115. Which this is one of the most amazing 15s I've ever played through. For a little box, as you can see, it's not very big. I've taken this thing to clubs. I've taken this thing to some live gigs. It's loaded with the Eminence Kappa 15A, which is important I say that because I had no idea what was in here. But I fell in love with the sound of this box, so I called up the guys at Ashdown and said, what kind of speakers are there? What'd you put in there? And they told me that's what it was. So I called up the folks at Eminence and I had them ship me a couple of speakers and I use those as all my 15s. I think they're really articulate, but they also have a lot of body to them. This cabinet, on some of the club gigs, I mean, this thing will keep, with an amp like this, it'll keep up with a loud drum. Second loudest drummer I know is Kenny Aronoff, and it'll keep up with him just fine. It'll fill the room. So this is a great little box here too. And I've got up here in the side the Helix Stomp, which I use when I go and do my fly-out dates with the Kings of Chaos or bands like that. I'll throw that in my bag, and it actually has all the sounds that are in this big Line 6, but it's a lot more convenient to get on a plane with. And it sounds almost identical. There's just a few limitations compared to this big floorboard. But to get a good bass sound, that works very well for me, and it emulates a lot of the amplifiers I use. So carrying on, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention two other things, because we're talking about gear. Okay, so we're doing it. Anyway, so here's Rotosound strings. Yay, Rotosound strings, my favorite strings since the 60s and 70s. All my heroes used to play these strings, and I've been using those strings since 1984. There's something about the alloys they use and the way they wind them. They're just brighter than a lot of the other strings. They're little, they have a nice tension to them that I'm just very used to. I never feel comfortable on any other string. So the Rotosound strings, those are the Billy Sheehan sets. You can tell I like Billy Sheehan a lot. It's kind of road tested all the things I love and did a great job with all of them. BBP 34. These are fantastic basses. This is just right off the rack. I'm actually doing a commercial for Yamaha because they've been so very nice for me, but I love this bass. This is I call it my couch bass, although I've taken it on gigs a dozen times already. And it's just a real solid, super qualified bass. It's not like all the weird shit that I love. I love the too many pickups and all that stuff just because I just like what it does to the amplifiers. But for just off the rack like Fender-ish type of like, it's just a bass. This one's terrific. And a lot of recordings I do for other people out here in the studio, I'll use it if they want more of a traditional bass tone, if they want kind of like that wonderful 60s, 70s, you know, kind of, you know, movable tone that carries a song. This does a great job with that. So there it is. I love it. And big kiss, all that. Thank you so much for stopping my little world. I hope you've enjoyed some of my wonderful stuff that I've accumulated. Having a great time. I can't wait to take a lot of this stuff on the road and play for you guys with FIRSTBORNE, with my brothers Chris, Myrone, and Garish. And I hope to see you out there soon. Look for us online, listen to our music, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Duh.